Hi, I'm Lisa Hayden with Channel 6 Central Kentucky TV, community focus on Washington County. Today, our first guest is Sue Kelly Ballard. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning.
Good morning. Sue is from Washington County, I suppose, right, Sue?
Well, I was born in Washington County, yes. My father was a career Army officer, though, so we lived all over. But we consider Springfield our hometown.
Right. Well, of course, the Kellys originate from here, and I was privileged to have your father on one day and interview him.
Oh, fantastic.
So he gave me the history of the Kelly family here, which is just wonderful. And
yes, he's a wonderful historian, and he wrote a wonderful book called Battle Fire about World War II. Amazing.
Yes. And he was able to share with us, which I think applies to the situation we're in today with regard to your new book, because he told us, the listening audience, how he used to milk cows and go out in the when we had had cold weather and not have the amenities and the things that we do today. And
right.
And so now you've written a book and regarding pioneer times.
Right. And I tell you what, living in the wilderness was not easy. You had to have fortitude. You had to face death every day in some cases, especially in early pioneer Kentucky, because those settlers were invading the Indian territory. And so, of course, that was going to lead to war and conquest. And so it was a very turbulent, violent time. And it was a very turbulent, violent time for America because the colonies were revolting. So we had the American Revolution going on at this time, and we had people trying to settle Kentucky. So very interesting, very traumatic in many cases. It was actually difficult to study the history of that time in some cases because the violence was actually quite sickening. So you had to have I kept wondering, how do they do it? How do they do it?
So you Sue, are a historian yourself.
Well, I dabble in history because my upbringing is as a chemist. I teach chemistry at Elizabethtown Community and Technical College. And prior to that, I was in industry and worked in quality management. Growing up, I was very interested in reading and writing, and that was definitely an interest of mine, but I was practical. Went into the sciences, which was wonderful, and I'm glad I did. But the time came when I said, you know, I'd like to write a book. And I want it to be about a brave, strong woman, especially a mother, because I think good mothers did their part in building our great nation. They raised the next generation, and through very trying wilderness conditions.
Yeah.
So it's time. It's time for their story.
Well, and so this is your first book?
This is my first book. Yes.
Okay.
I actually wrote a mystery, and I did that to learn how to write, so I could write this book. So I wrote a mystery. I almost got it published, but not quite. And but then I said, I'm ready now. And I spent a couple years researching Daniel Boone's life, because of course there's nothing about the wife. And so once I understood his life real well, I stepped back and I tried to imagine, well, what would Rebecca Boone and her family be doing? Because she raised 9 children in wilderness conditions, and he was gone a lot, sometimes years at a time. And this was before cell phones and mail service. You didn't know if your husband was dead or alive. So she had a lot to handle.
So you researched her after you researched Daniel Boone. Of course, everybody knows about Daniel Boone and his being involved in the settlement of Kentucky.
Right.
But now, so you're saying that, of course, through those times, and up until I'd say even recently, women weren't recognized as or given any credit
Right.
for their contribution.
Right.
So
right.
you wanted to focus on the woman.
I did. Partly because of my own mother, who was an Army wife, and her husband was gone to Vietnam, Korea, World War II. She had to hold the home fort down, and she had to worry about her husband and whether he would return. So, and then we also think we're related to the Boones through their daughter Susanna Hayes, who married William Hayes. Now, it turns out he's not in our direct line. We thought he was. There was a William Hayes that fought in the Revolutionary War, and Susanna's William Hayes fought in the Revolutionary War, but they're not the same person. But they might be cousins, or they might be, have
Probably
some relationship.
yeah.
So we're still looking for that.
Yeah.
But so that gave me an interest in the Boones, and it gave me an interest in the mother's role of the husband's career and success. So I was really, really passionate about telling Rebecca Boone's story. I felt like, while I was writing it, I felt like she was channeling me. It is in first person, so she's speaking from her heart.
It is in first
It's
person?
in first person,
Okay.
and she tells you what it was like. It starts off the day he leaves. He heads out to Kentucky for the first exploration. That's May 1st, 1769. He leaves Rebecca behind on the Yadkin River in the brushy mountains of North Carolina on a remote farm. She's got 6 young children, and she's 2 months pregnant. And he's gone for 2 years. 2 years of long uncertainty. And then when he returns, and the trip wasn't entirely a success. And as a matter of fact, it was a tragedy in some ways, or in actual ways. They go and try to settle Boonesboro. And the first attempt results in a tragedy, family tragedy. I won't give away all the details.
Won't give away.
And then when they go again, they do settle Boonesboro, but you can imagine there's a small settlement and a couple of others in the middle of this vast wilderness, infested with savages, as they would say. No stores. You're completely on your own for everything. Cloth becomes hard to get. Your clothes wear out. There's nothing to replace them. You have to work hard and under the chance that you'd be killed while you're out there in the field away from the fort. So it was really an amazing time, and these people were amazing. And also the Indians, their history. I dwelled from Rebecca's perspective, but there are some stories about the Indians and what they had to go through and what life was for them also, which of course was very dangerous and harrowing.
And so now the name of this book is My Blessed
Wretched Life.
My Blessed Wretched Life.
Rebecca Boone's story.
Rebecca Boone's story. Now, is this all based on factual information that you were able to uncover?
Well, yes and no. Like I said, there's a lot known about Daniel Boone, so I studied his life, and he was amazing. Oh my gosh, what an adventurous man and story his life unfolds. But her life, very little is known about. So anything that involves like the 2 years while he was gone and everything that she did to try to keep her family together and survive, that's all from my imagination. But it's based on actual times and events that were happening. So it's part history, part it's a historical novel is what it is.
Yeah, it's a historical novel. Well, of course, I was lucky enough to come to the book fair in Frankfurt.
Yes, the Kentucky Book Fair.
And get your autograph on on the book that I purchased from you to give to my daughter for Christmas, because I don't think that often enough we recognize the women who've been instrumental in founding our state and our country.
Right.
So I'm really delighted that you've written about this, and now with this being your first book published, I think you're getting lots of accolades and acclaim on.
It's been very positive. As a matter of fact, of course, I'm still working, so I've been invited to a lot of events. One of the last ones was the Western Kentucky University Southern Kentucky Book Fair. I'm invited to signings. One of my first signings was for one of my first events when my book first came out. As I was invited to Cumberland Gap to give a talk to the Daughters of the American Revolution. There was 100 of them having a banquet to celebrate some event of theirs, and so I went to that. So it's, I've just been all over. It's been great fun. I've met people, and a world has opened up to me. There's reenactors. There's like the Civil War reenactors. Well, I hadn't thought about the pioneer reenactors, but there's a lot of them, and they're wonderful. They dress to the hilt as the pioneers did. They cook their food out in the open, and they live in their tents, and they teach you a lot of history. Boonesboro is a great place. I've been there. I'm a member of the Boone Society. I'm on their board of directors, and they're having an event right now called the American Frontier History Expedition. And this Sunday, they're going to be coming over Cumberland Gap, horses and all, and reenacting that. And then they're going to move on through Berea and Boonesboro. And so I'm going to be participating in that as a volunteer. I'm not a reenactor. But anyway, what's happened is I've given myself a second job, basically. and I'm enjoying it a lot. And I've been involved way more than I was previously when I was trying to study all this on my own with the pioneer history, and it is fantastic and it is amazing.
Yeah. Well, I've been to some of those reenactments, and it's absolutely astounding, the conditions in which our pioneers lived.
Yes.
And I think about poor Rebecca, even their clothing, some of their wearing wool and things like that when it was hot.
Right. Yes.
I mean, I just think
scrub those things, when you ever had a chance to, just trying to stay clean.
Yeah.
And healthy and put food on the table, and that's one of the reasons why I have the title "My Blessed Wretched Life." Everything was so hard, and it was survival mode all the time. But when you did succeed in putting that food on the table, why, you felt blessed. I mean, you felt grateful after all your labor and toil had paid off, that the rains hadn't washed it away, or the animals eaten it, or something. So they persevered, and they counted their blessings.
And we should feel blessed in that these are the people that founded our country, and we wouldn't be where we are today.
That is right.
If it wasn't for them.
That's right. They did it. And after I studied their life and wrote the book, when I was done, I said, I will never complain about another thing again.
Yeah.
Of course, I still do, but for a while there, I actually didn't. I was like, I don't care. My battery's dead. That's nothing.
That's nothing. Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to worry about food. And golly, I think about if I had to wash my clothes in the creek, how fortunate, and walk a mile or whatever.
Right.
And you just wonder really how they did survive.
Yes.
And so I haven't had the opportunity yet to read the book, but I know that also you've brought some other things with you. I wanted to show the book,
oh, yes.
My Blessed Wretched Life, and then you've got some things where they've where you've been recognized in some other publications.
Yes.
So now what are those? You've got
I just wanted to mention, I was so happy. I love the Kentucky Monthly Magazine, and in November of this 2015, 2016.
2016.
Yeah, 2016.
Oh, November 2016.
Yeah. Where am I? What year is it? Anyway.
You're back in the pioneer time.
Yeah, it's 1700s. Yeah, in November, the Kentucky Monthly put a very nice review about my book. Steve Flaherty did the review, and so that was a thrill for me. That was right about the time of the Kentucky Book Fair, and then after that, I got a call from a writer from Minnesota, and I have no idea how someone in Minnesota heard about my book, but they wanted to do a review for me in the Muzzle Loader magazine, which is coming out now. So this is the new edition of the Muzzle Loader magazine. It comes out every 2 months, and it was a wonderful review too. So I've been so pleased with the way the book's been received and how enthusiastic people are about it. I get fan letters and emails, and I don't even have my address out there, but they get a hold of my publisher, or somehow they find out, and so that leads to more events and more signings and things to do. So
and I think you recently had a signing at St. Catherine, correct?
I did, and it was wonderful. I got there on a sunny day, and the campus was beautiful, and I went to that lovely Emily Hunley Library, and Ilona Burdett, the library director, and Evelyn Silliman just put together the nicest event and had a good crowd, and I just thought it was a lovely day. It was probably one of my favorite signings.
Well, great.
So I enjoyed that very much.
Now, if people want to purchase your book, where can they get that?
They can get it from my publisher, Butler Books, by going to www.butlerbooks.com, or Amazon, or Barnes & Noble. They can be ordered online.
Great.
Also, in Elizabethtown, at least, for sure, the Barnes & Noble carries it in their store.
Okay, good. And so if someone is interested in contacting you, do you have an email address?
I do. I guess I'll give my work address, because that's the one I check the most. I also have a Gmail, but it's sue.ballard@kctcs.edu. And that's KCTCS stands for Kentucky Community and Technical College System.
Right. We have one right here. We have the Springfield campus.
That's right.
Here.
That's
KCTCS.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So people here will know that acronym. Good.
Right. So well, good. So that because you're still teaching there, and then and we have to also mention that not only is your family from Springfield, Washington County, but your husband.
Oh, yes.
Jimmy, I suppose you met here in Springfield.
That's right. I met him after going to St. Catherine's my senior year while my father was in Vietnam.
So you were at the academy?
I was at the academy.
St. Catherine Academy, okay.
And I met a lot, of course I made a lot of friends that year, and a couple years later while I was at UK, one of them got married, and it was because of that I met Jimmy. And who knew that I'd travel all over the world and I'd wind up marrying a Springfield boy, Jimmy Ballard.
Yeah.
And by the way, he has pioneer ancestors that were present at Boonesboro at that time.
Really?
Yes.
Did you find that out when you were?
I did. I found
doing this.
There was two things I found out that were a real surprise to me. One was. You've heard of the Wilderness Trail, Blazing the Wilderness Trail.
Right.
Okay, it was Daniel Boone and 30 woodcutters. Well, unknown to me, Susanna, who's possibly
related,
an ancestor of mine, and I keep thinking maybe my name, Sue, came down through the years from that. But anyway, Susanna was on that trip too. There was 2 women on the trip. Susanna Hayes, who was married to William Hayes at that time, and he was there too, and a slave girl, Gracie. And I never heard of that before. I had never heard that Susanna Boone and Gracie were there with the woodcutters as they were blazing the trail. And then the other thing I found out was that my husband had pioneers right there in the midst of everything too. And of course, a lot of them settled in Bardstown. And
were those Ballards or
Ballards? Yes,
they were Ballards.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So and that's a side of the family I haven't pursued yet as heavily as I'd like to. So that's my next big genealogy search.
Yeah. Well, that's really exciting. So, well, I'm really looking forward to reading this, My Blessed Wretched Life, Rebecca Boone's story, by Sue Ballard, and I know your father's proud, and all your family.
Yes, yes. My father was, he was very supportive and helpful, having written a book himself. You know, he had a lot of really good advice, and it was funny because he never asked to see my manuscript while I was writing it, and I had a feeling it was because he was afraid he might not like it, you know. So, but he gave me lots of advice, lots of support, and it was wonderful. And when the book came out, he got a copy and he read it, and fortunately, he loved it.
That's always good.
I was in a department store and I got a call, and it was my father, and he says, "Your book is so good. It's so good."
Yeah, it's always good when you can get approval from your father on those things.
It's got so much history. So I dedicated the book to my father.
Okay.
But I also, in my biography, acknowledged that my mother was also one of my inspirations for this story. So both of my parents.
Yeah,
made
I'm
it
sure she
possible.
was. I'm sure she was. And I've heard a lot of good things about her through your sister Krista, who resides here now in Springfield.
Yes.
And
Krista and Johnny.
so, and she's told me a lot of, well, of course, Dan, you know.
Yes, my brother
been
Dan.
around here for a long time. And I guess, I don't know when he's going to get back from his mission trip.
He's coming back end of August. We finally got news.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So I know Dan Kelly, he'll be very proud when he gets the opportunity to read this as well, because he's quite a historian too.
He is, yes, yeah. And
So,
he's made history too. So
exactly.
But he does love history.
Right.
Who doesn't?
Right.
I mean, who doesn't? When
yeah.
you get into it and start looking into things, you can always go so deep. You know, it's just so addictive eventually.
Yeah.
So you have to almost watch out.
And bringing these people to life.
Yes.
So I just want to thank you for being here today and sharing
Lisa.
this
Thank you.
with
I
us,
enjoyed it
Sue.
so much.
Yeah, and so we want everyone to buy Sue's book, and they can purchase that online through Amazon and through
Barnes and Noble.
And then
the publisher itself, Butler Books.
Butler Books.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Right. And contact Sue at
Sue.Ballard at kctcs.edu.
.edu. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Lisa.